blah. But I've seen it more in the context of, and this is from parents who are like my age or whatever, but they're on Facebook saying they're doing this to like kind of allow creativity and exploring their intellect and everything else. So that's where I think that's, like Roseanne just telling it like it is kind of where that is coming from. Certainly in Los Angeles, that's become a reality, just everyday life. You go to Starbucks, you see that.
Well, it's going to be Tuesday at 7 Central and 8 Pacific and East Coast time on ABC. So we recommend you check it out and at least be part of the conversation, because everybody should be talking about it Wednesday. Then Roseanne kind of is known for telling it like it is, at least as she sees it. And last week there was an interesting other type of show where somebody who tells it like it isn't, O.J. Simpson, was back on the air.
Well, yeah, it was like March 12th when he came back on the air. Yeah, I rarely schedule my time around certain shows because my schedule's different every day.
Yeah.
But I definitely went and watched this because I was like, I want to see. This was 12 years ago, so it was 12 years after the murders and 12 years since then. And this was an interview, the only interview he did about the murders, and also in conjunction with him releasing the book If I Did It. So he meant to, talk about it in the hypothetical, and he brings it up occasionally when he slips up. And when I mean slip up, he goes from hypothetically this could have happened, and 98% of it is him saying, I remember doing this,
Wow.
I did that. And then there's certain things that he dissociates with, and calls himself Charlie as if Charlie was a separate person, but there is no Charlie. And then there is, which ruins the name of Charlie for everybody, but and then there's these little moments of anger, and he gets all puffed up, and he's still angry at Nicole after her death.
Wow.
You get the idea for making him do it. He says, I told you this would happen.
Jeez.
And so it's basically, that they cut in a panel with a bunch of experts, including one of the prosecutors, and basically everybody agreed this is a confession, and they named it the Lost / Confession ? And it was pretty interesting because it reminded me of many of the guys I've dated, so it kind of scared me. So, but the reality is that I also recognize that this was like this guy is a product of whatever mental health issues he has. If you glorify that sort of bigger than life personality, and everybody talked about, even at the time of they're airing this interview, how magnanimous he would seem, how charming he was, and yet it turns into, they had an FBI profile saying, and those are the ones that you kind of notice that they're able to manipulate people. And one of the pop phenomenons of this whole thing was that when that trial went down, it was within 2 years of the LA riots, and there was a lot of anger, at least in the Los Angeles area, in the black community and others, but that these cops got off on they didn't get charged in the Rodney King beating. But now it was like this big conversation nationwide with OJ's slow, chase, everything. Yeah. And it was one of the first trials that really got eaten alive in the media on so many levels. And so everybody had a side by the time the jury happened. So, by the time there was and I've met a couple of the juries that were on there, and they were like, they're convinced that OJ didn't do it. And I'm like, I don't know if they've seen this interview, but you can't be convinced of that anymore.
Were they black or white?
They were both black.
Yeah, because I remember when they made the announcement, I was working in Chicago at a big media company called Reuters, and we all went in this big room. Everybody got up and ran, like, the verdict's coming. And all, to a T, every black person was ecstatic, like jumping up and down like their team won the Super Bowl. And then all of us non-black people were all like going, "Oh, holy moly!" And and the thing is that it really did set the whole. But the thing was, that I've seen a lot of African American commentators say in the years since then that that at that moment it was like you said, right after the LA riots and Rodney King, and that was so unfair that those cops got away with it on Rodney King that people put aside common sense and knew later they believed that he was guilty. But at that moment, it was not just about him. It was a sense of feeling like finally, somebody doesn't go down for something. Right.
And there was a lot of hero worship involved. There was a lot of commentary about the hero worship. He's a hero and we can't let him fall was kind of the comment, even from the juries.
Yeah, I mean, the Johnny Cochran and the Dream Team, they did, to their credit, they did an unbelievable job of creating that sideshow and tapping into that racial tension that people were feeling and making the trial more about that. They convinced the jury basically that like this isn't about a man murdering a woman. This is about civil rights. And they did and if you watch the FX miniseries, which I highly recommend, and actually the ESPN 5-part documentary might even be better. It's because they have just so much. They dug up so much hidden footage that no one's ever seen before. And
OJ Made in America on the ESPN one.
Oh, right, that's right.
And there's actually a clip from Made in America where there's a woman who interviewed him on the phone, and then he called her back. It was like at midnight, and he said, "Hey, I got something I want to say to you. I want you to know that if I did do it, it was because I loved her very much. You understand that?"
Oh my gosh!
And she was like, "Okay, bye," and then hung up the phone.
Yeah, that's exactly what that loss. I recommend you can see it now online completely. It's like 2 hours of
Really?
But it's because they had a lot of cut-ins and they did a lot of panel talks in between, which was interesting. But yeah, exactly. He was stalking her and was known to stalk her, and this this disassociation and definitely some narcissism, and not that I'm a psychologist, but it's enough that you go like, that there's a switch that goes off on this guy, and it kept going on and off through the entire interview, and it was like a really scary thing to see. Like, wow, I wonder how close to being stalked. I mean, I've been stalked before, so I wonder how close I've been stalked, by some exes. This whole hero worship thing where we can't find fault, we can't use our reason anymore, is kind of that pop culture thing can get us into big trouble in terms of like
false idols.
Yeah, false idols, and that happens in politics too, and all that. So, And
I do think race is a part of it too, because I have a lot of black friends in the comedy community who are convinced that Bill Cosby is innocent.
Really?
And I think it's less about the facts and more about that. I feel like black, maybe more than any other race, like they really need to have their heroes, and it's important for them to have heroes and role models to look up to, just based on what their race has been through in the past.
But he was called out first by a black comic, Hannibal Buress.
You're bringing up facts. That's not really fair.
Well, yeah.
No, you make it good, but I think for a lot of people, it's like, no, he can't. This is Dr. Huxtable. This is my favorite.
Honestly, Bill Cosby is one of my favorites, and that was disappointing. But it's like, I think you touched on it, and you said it more explicitly, but Carl. But it's true. It becomes about finally we're not getting put down, even though that's not the reality of what happened. That's not the. Yeah, so this glorification of, this is how we got the Kardashians and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, it was definitely the birth of that. They say the Gulf War was the birth of the 24-hour news cycle, because CNN was showing the Gulf War around the clock. And then this was the birth of tabloid journalism and the coverage of the high-speed chase down the freeway and things like that they waste so much time on now. It's staggering. I mean, because I work from home on Thursdays and Fridays, and last year there was a stretch of time where I wasn't being as productive as I should have been, and I had the TV on every day, and oh my gosh, the amount of like seriously, they'll follow a car for like a half hour to an hour, interrupting through the news, cutting into other TV shows, just as, what's going on there? Oh, the car finally got pulled over. It's like, wow, okay. Thanks. Thank you for enlightening me.
For those of you who do not live on the West Coast, this might be new to you, but we do find our entertainment in strange ways here.
Yes.
I mean, I think we get saturated with stars so often that when there's a car chase, which might be not very fast at all, it suddenly is like a focusing moment. And then when you have a car chase and a celebrity like the O.J. Simpson thing, well, that was golden.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was
Well, two thoughts, actually, before we move on. I was going to say that, one, I think that a brilliant satire, extremely entertaining look at the phenomenon of the 24-hour news cycle and how it started and how the car chase started and all coverage started is Anchorman 2. Brilliant. I thought it was like funnier than the first one.
I thought it got a lot of people said they didn't like it, but I thought it was good. I didn't like it quite as much as the first one, but I really thought it was funny.
I thought the first one may be funnier, but the second one, there was just so much being said in the movie in a way that was entertaining that it really nailed how corrupt the media has gotten from all sides. But it really showed the birth of, they called it GNN in the movie, the Global News Network, and just so funny. I mean, and then the other thing I was going to say is, oh man, well maybe I'm fried today with all the cough medication or whatever, but
it's on drugs, guys.
Yeah, I sure am. But I was going to say Anchorman 2 and that's it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh no, I remember it was that when the OJ thing happened, I was having
We're
a
so
fight.
on suspense right now. Come on, girl.
I was
let's
having
go.
a fight with my girlfriend at the time from college, and she was in Dallas. I was in Little Rock. And I'm like, come on, what's the big deal? So some football players like going down the freeway in a white truck. Who cares? And she's like, you don't get it. You just don't get it. And you know what? Laura Pitzenbarger, you were right. I just didn't get it. So anyways.
But imagine being a Houston Rockets fan, because you're tuned into the NBA Finals, then suddenly your team is being shoved into the corner of the NBC screen while it's full screen on the chase.
Holy cow.
Yeah, scarred Michael forever.
I just wanted to win my argument. That's all,
Yeah, well, okay.
Yeah. So, anyway, last week there was the big student walkout over gun violence in schools and in general gun policy in America. Michael, you were the one who brought up discussing this. So, perhaps if you want to let people know, our take on it.
Yeah. So it was Wednesday the 14th. So it was just before we recorded last week, and it happened all across the nation, both in high schools and colleges, as kind of a response to the tragedy that happened in Parkland. A lot of students took initiative to do a protest of walking out of their class, and they did it for 17 minutes to honor the 17 students who died in Parkland. And then, as kind of a follow-up to that, this coming weekend, there's going to be the March for Our Lives rally. The largest one is happening in Washington, D.C., but it's going to be actually in over 800 places around the world, including L.A., New York, other different whole list of countries that I'm seeing here. And there's people like Oprah Winfrey, George Clooney, Steven Spielberg and Kate Capshaw, Amy Schumer. They've all donated upwards of $500,000 to this event to make sure it gets a lot of attention. And I mean, I'm glad to see it, because a lot of these tragedies that have happened, it gets followed up with the thoughts and prayers cliche, and then nothing happens. And so then to see people actually trying to make a stance of some in some regard, especially young people like that, I think it represents a tremendous step forward.
Yeah, well, they're saying that this is because of social media, one of the fastest, best organized movements anybody's ever seen. So
and the Women's March is involved in it too. There's big groups in it that are involved that already have experience in organizing all this. This is not 17-year-olds doing the massive, doing this all, getting the permits and all that stuff in all the different cities to get.
That's a good point. Yeah, it was suggested, I think, on a tweet sent out by the Women's March, and then students kind of latched onto that.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and the thing is that I'm on the opposite end. This chick over here is not against the gun thing, but but the deal is that yes, it's like it's kind of rooted in our Catholic faith, that having free will and that First Amendment, being able to speak your mind without punishment for speaking your mind, and which is good. So in that sense, I get that whole, being okay with